I think it's that special sauce that we have. I think it's you call it love, right? I think it's the community building. I think when kids and families walk into Intrinsic, I mean, the school just looks different, right? Than a traditional school that kids may have gone to for elementary school. And so I think immediately kids are intrigued. They're like, oh, this place looks different. I want to be here.
You're listening to the Bold by Choice podcast with Vashaunta Harris and Jim Goenner, where we ask what school could be and learn from the people brave enough to build it. Powered by the National Charter Schools Institute.
So after reviewing today's reading, I had one question that really sparked up in my mind. And that is, what does the article suggest is actually lost when the public education systems begin to prioritize things like uniformity over pluralism, even when the intention might be around fairness or equity?
Sure, great question. And today's reading comes from an author that I just have tremendous respect for. I discovered her less than a year ago, Dr. Ashley Rogers Goenner. And Jim, I think you had her out at the Institute's event at last year's conference, didn't you?
She was one of our keynote speakers at our Advocates and Implementers event at the National Charter Schools Conference with Starlee Coleman. And yeah, she is worth reading and listening to.
And what I love about her work, and especially the selection that we're reading today from her book, Educational Pluralism and Democracy, is, kind of this uniquely American notion that we're a really big country, and we're a country made up of people that have a lot of different views on things, a lot of different values. We've come from a lot of different places. And pluralism really is a recognition that there is no one size that fits all within public education. And this is something that America, as American as that sounds, where we have so much choice in so many other areas, in education, historically, we've taken the view that we're going to create the one best system and we're going to do things one way and then replicate that elsewhere. So that uniform approach that so many people who built our public education system today took was to try to convey the same things to the same people in the same ways. And that really worked against the notion that people can have different competing beliefs and we can all still live together in peace and harmony in one great big huge nation. So what Dr. Goenner does in her book is she doesn't only just present a compelling argument as to why that's important in America today, but shows that it can be done and is being done in lots of other places in the world. And it's done not just through different types of public school choices, but by choices among public schools and private schools and secular schools and faith-based schools. And it works. And it works really, really well, and it's something that can work here. And I take that to heart, that what we're doing in the charter space to bring diversity in types of schools is something that's going to pay dividends for America into the future.
And Jim, I actually want to come to you to kind of double click on this piece. And we've been talking about different tensions that have risen as we've been taking a leap to innovate with charter schools and other types of schools. And oftentimes you'll hear folks really talk about common standards, the common core, commonalities. How do we be cohesive and serve the entire public in the same way? And then this other piece of the puzzle is we're saying there is a true need at schools to serve their community that reflects community values, cultures, and purposes. So I'd love to hear you kind of talk about where you see those tensions today.
Dr. Goenner's work, I'm going to call her Ashley, is so poignant because when you think about things, right, our democracy, our republic, we assume it can handle pluralism in religion, that it can handle pluralism in media. And so the question is, why do we assume it can't handle pluralism in schooling? That is the old model, right? The one best system, the system that valued uniformity and sameness. Well, times have changed, society's changed, demands have changed, and we still need education to function as civic infrastructure, but we need our schools to adapt and to evolve. And part of that is allowing schools to have different missions, different focuses, different approaches, different styles, different schedules, and that parents and families can choose those, educators can choose those. And that what she argues is that civic infrastructure isn't uniformity. It's multiple pathways, but towards a shared purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the real power here, is that we can have lots of different types of schools, let's call them public schools, but they have a purpose: better educated students, better prepared citizens.
Yeah. There's a piece that really struck me, Don, and you kind of hit on this a little bit in terms of looking at other countries. What are the international examples, many of which, concept of pluralism is already more normalized in their school system? What does that comparison reveal about assumptions we've baked into our model of public education?
That's a great question, and I love that question because it kind of gets at the history of why our public education system looks the way it does. And the reason our public education system looks the way it does is because the founders of it really were trying to promote uniformity across the United States. Uniformity in terms of what I'll call democratic values, the way people act, the way people think, the way people approach family life and civic life, because they were trying to create some sort of, I'll call it generally accepted, generally understood uh, culture, if you will. Even the name, that if you go back 100 years, even the name of public schools is the common school, shows that we're trying to have common experiences. So, in that sense, the education system that we've inherited from others is not necessarily about getting great results for kids. It's not necessarily about respecting individual values and what different communities like and value and what different families like and value over other things. It's about creating that commonality. It's a social engineering tool to create a society in a certain way. And I think that the beauty of educational pluralism is a recognition that America is a great big nation with lots of different people in it, and we can all live in peace and harmony, even though we might believe in different things.
And Jim, I'm really intrigued in that exact point. If we say took a leap of faith, right, and truly embraced pluralism as democratic good, would we have some trade-offs that we'd have to make? All of us, right? Policymakers, educators, communities. And what would we need to be more honest about in those trade-offs?
The whole world is about trade-offs and tensions, right? But I'm going to just go back to this pluralism. One thing that is on our money is a phrase, e pluribus unum. So I'm going to put Don's Hillsdale College education to a test. Don, what does e pluribus unum mean? And
Right.
why is that on our money?
Right. Great question. Out of many, one. And one of the fun things about E pluribus unum, if you count it up, I think there are 13 letters in that, which remind me of the 13 individual colonies that came together to form the United States. So just a real example that out of many, we came one. And there's always been this tension in that phrase between what side of that phrase are we on? Are we on the side of the pluribus, where it's the respect, the acknowledgement that we have differing goals, objectives, values, and things? Or are we trending more to that unum, where we're coming together on stuff and creating a common goal and a common purpose? That really is one of the beauties of self-governance, right? Is that we get to decide those ourselves, and that balance is going to shift over time. So I think educational pluralism is just part of a natural extension of that and the continuing conversation we've been having as a nation of what do we do in common versus what might we do separately.
And Vashaunta, that is the tension. The tension is finding the balance.
Mhm.
And there's no preset balance that you look up and you set the machine to and it achieves, equilibrium. It is the ability to allow different people to do different things for different reasons, but have a shared civic purpose.
Well, Jim, you just hit the nail on the head for our school that we are visiting with today. We have really just taken a little bit of time to explore the idea that innovation in education isn't always about inventing something entirely new. There are times that it's about teachers and schools trying new things, improving them over time, and then adapting them to serve students better. And that idea really comes to life in schools that are constantly learning, adjusting, evolving, and really paying attention to what's going on with students. And today we are joined by someone leading a school where innovation isn't a single program or initiative, it's a mindset. Michelle Trojan is the principal at Intrinsic Schools in Chicago. Michelle, welcome to the Bold by Choice show. We're glad you're here.
Hey, y'all. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And before we dive straight into the school itself, we'd love to start with you. Your journey to Intrinsic is super powerful, especially how it connects back to the very neighborhood that you grew up in, which is where your school is located. So we'd love to offer you the opportunity first to share a bit about you with our listeners.
Awesome. Thank you. Like she said, Intrinsic is super personal to me. I grew up a block away from where Intrinsic is currently located in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood. I grew up with a single mom who worked 2 jobs to send me to private school because she didn't think that there was a school that was appropriate for me in the neighborhood. And so in full transparency, my mom missed things because she was working, because she needed to do that to make sure she could send me to an appropriate school. And so learning that as a young kid was hard, but I also knew it was what was needed. And so as a young high school student, I fell in love with education, specifically with history. I had a great history teacher in high school and knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I went to the University of Illinois, I studied history and became a history teacher. In 2008, there weren't a ton of teaching jobs. And so I interviewed for Teach for America and was placed here in Chicago, where I served as a history teacher. And in my second year, worked at Roe Clark Math and Science Academy, where I taught U.S. history and AP U.S. history. During that time at Roe Clark, I wanted to expand my impact. And so I took on leadership roles like department chair, grade level lead, and knew I wanted even more. And so after teaching for some time at Roe Clark, Intrinsic was breaking ground on the current location. And my mom got a flyer in the mail, and it was an enrollment flyer. And she had said, "Oh my goodness, Michelle, wouldn't it be awesome if you worked here? We could have lunch all the time." And I just kind of giggled. I was like, "Mom, I don't know how that works." But like, let me go check this out. And so I had went and interviewed and met our founder and now our chief strategy officer, and just knew I needed to work for them. And so I joined the Intrinsic team in 2014 as the Dean of Culture, served in the Dean of Culture role for a few years, assistant principal, and then co-principal. And what's really incredible is that Intrinsic is located in what once was Shannon Lumber. As a kid, I used to go to Shannon Lumber with my grandfather. And this was a time before cell phones, which I'd be so bored as a kid in this lumber yard. And there was a store in there like, oh my goodness, when are we going to leave, staring up at the ceiling? And that same ceiling is the refurbished ceiling in our barn, which is our gym and our cafeteria. And so for me, it's truly full circle. I'm able to lead a school and help provide a free and excellent education to kids and families who choose us, so that families can spend more time with their families and not worry about having to pay for their child's education.
Michelle, we're super excited for the podcast nation to hear your story and the intrinsic value that Intrinsic brings to students and families and the community. But we're using Ted Coldery's split screen strategy to anchor this, and we're going to have our resident scholar and wise one, Don Cooper, weigh in on that. But this is really about innovation as iteration. And what Ted warns is that there's this allure of comprehensive change, and that you can make some policy at the state level and it just trickles through and everybody changes and life is great. And what he's saying is, no, that's not how it happens. It happens by teachers and students and the adults that are closest to the action. They're every minute, every hour, every day, and they're learning, they're adapting, they're iterating. So it feels like Intrinsic embodies that. And I know part of your story, which I'd love you to share, is like your founders went around the country looking at the best and putting all that together into a puzzle that's your picture, that's Intrinsic. Tell us about that story.
Yeah, so our founder is Melissa Zakos, and she worked at the district, and she was learning from schools at the district, but realized there needed to be a shift in what we were doing, specifically at the high school. And so Melissa and Ami, who's our chief learning officer, spent a year traveling the country, learning from the best of the best, and specifically focused in on Montessori programs. And they asked the question, why do we only do Montessori for little ones? Why don't we bring what's happening in Montessori programming to the middle school and high school level? Because there's incredible things happening with that programming. But why does it stop when kids hit a certain age? And so Melissa and Ami spent that time traveling, learning, and then brought that back to Chicago and used that information, one, to think about the academic model, but two, to also think about the space and how our building is specially designed to support that type of learning.
And could you walk us through what the intrinsic model looks like and how it's designed to keep moving? It's very cool.
Yeah, so everyone should go check out the website because I think you'll see just beautiful pictures of the space. But all of our English and math classes happen in what we call a pod space. This is a massive classroom. In this space, you're going to see 3 teachers, 2 general education teachers and 1 special education teacher. Those teachers work together all day long. They teach together, they plan together, they grade together. And so it is so essential that those teachers really work strategically and intentionally together. And in that space, you're going to see flexible furniture. And so with that flexible furniture, teachers are able on that planning period to review academic data from that day or the previous day. They're able to say, what did students not yet master? And how can we work together as a team of 3 to redistribute, potentially to redesign our classroom space and make adjustments to ensure the next day, the next class period, students are mastering the material and ready to move forward.
Michelle, part of this is focused on innovation. For the critic and skeptic that says, well, Montessori, Maria Montessori, like, wasn't she born in the 1800s? What is this? This isn't new.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where Intrinsic is able to really innovate and pair Montessori with technology, right? And so you're going to see at Intrinsic, every student has a Chromebook. And it's not a Chromebook to have a Chromebook, right? It's a Chromebook that's used really intentionally. And so our teachers are using different programming to best support the personalization, right? And that's what technology does for us, is it's able to personalize learning in a way that individual teachers simply can't, right? And then I think the other piece is that we're never done learning about how to improve this model, right? We are spending so much time through instructional coaching saying this part of the model, this pod routine, as we call it, works, or this one doesn't work. And let's fix it and let's try it next week, because in being so small, we have the ability to really change quickly to best support student outcomes.
So the listeners know I love Montessori and that my own children had Montessori experience, but I just want to talk about Maria Montessori for a minute, because I don't think most people know she was a physician, one of the first female physicians in Italy. And she got into education, and part of what she changed, we call it art changers, right, was this idea that students are passive recipients and that they can be engaged and they can take ownership for their learning and there can be joy of learning. That's part of the intrinsic experience.
Yeah.
Talk to us. What's that look like and feel like through the eyes of a student?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first example that comes to mind around students taking ownership of their learning is our C-Day programming. So our C-Day happens on Wednesday, and every Wednesday at Intrinsic, we run a completely different schedule. We heard feedback years ago before COVID from our kids that said they wanted to be more involved, but they simply had other responsibilities outside of the school day. And so this initially started with clubs and different activities. We said, well, what if we put those clubs during the day? And then we paired that with academic supports. So on Wednesday, students have the opportunity to choose their schedule, their academic schedule, every single week based on what they need. So in that advisory time, students are looking at their grades, they're looking at their assessments, and they're saying, maybe I didn't do so well on that math assessment. I need to go see my math teacher on Wednesday so that I can get some additional tutoring, or I can go join a peer study group, or I can go to AP office hours. And so our kids are able to make their own goals, set a plan for achieving those goals, and then come back to it and say, did I master it? Did I not? And what do I need to do next week that's the same or different so that I'm on track?
Vashaunta, this reminds me of the conversation you and I had yesterday with Governor John Engler, the former Michigan governor. But remember, he was talking about getting kids exposure to what's possible. And that's what your exposure program does. And like we're talking about it, you're doing it. It's just phenomenal to see that. How is that helping students see possibilities that maybe they didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Intrinsic does really well is think about what do kids need to see, but we also listen to kids. And when kids bring something to us and say, hey, I heard about this incredible thing, we say, let's try it. And so one of those examples is our networking night. We host this annually for all of our juniors and seniors, where we bring in professionals from adult networks. And these are professionals in any and all career field. And students get that practice at Intrinsic, networking with different adults, learning about what they love about their career, learning about what they hate about their career. And then what we're building this year is an opportunity for then kids to continue that engagement via email with those professionals, and then hopefully set up a career shadow day where they can go, they can spend the day with that professional and really have on-site experience for that different career. I think the other thing that Intrinsic is able to do is we're able to partner with the district for things that we simply can't provide. And so we know that the trades industry is something that a group of our young people are really interested in. And so we're able to partner with the district for different programming like Chicago Builds, where kids go and they spend half the day earning credit-bearing courses specifically in the trades. Or they have different field trips where kids can go and learn about different trades programs with students from across the city.
What I am just like kind of sitting here with, I'm listening to the entire experience. So we talk about Ted Coldry often pushes us to think about challenging the givens. And you all have done that. You took the schedule that is traditional and you said, hey, we can do something else with this to make sure that it's meeting the needs of our students, especially in the name of extracurriculars or clubs or in additional support for their academics. And then you didn't stop there. So there's all these exposure opportunities. Is a lot of work in helping students see their futures in the way that they want to, and not in this kind of like prescribed way. And one of the things that's sitting with me, and my heart kind of melted the other day when we were chatting, because we asked you something like, well, what do you hope happens with your students when they graduate? And just really loved hearing you talk about that. So when students leave Intrinsic, what do you hope that they carry into the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think like when I think about the state of the world currently, I hope that when kids leave Intrinsic, first and foremost, they are good human beings, right? That they have taken our epic core values of empathy, perseverance, identity, and curiosity, have really gained lived experiences with those core values and go out and really make this positive impact in society. Because I think like we can all use some more positive impact in our world. I hope our kids have learned to be confident, right, through those experiences like networking night, that they feel confident going into a workplace or going into an interview and making that impact. And ultimately, I hope they feel ready because of the different exposure pieces. I think Intrinsic is doing so many things to make sure that we're setting kids up to be good humans, to make that impact. And one of those things is through our scholarship. Intrinsic is so lucky to have a very generous donation. We're able to give every year $1.5 million in scholarships to our kids.
Incredible.
Right? Like that doesn't exist in public schools, right? And that scholarship is open to kids who are going to any pathway, college, trades, anything else. And so we're hoping that they, again, can make this positive contribution, and we're providing monetary support so that they feel really confident in doing that. And that scholarship's renewable for 4 years.
Vashaunta, that sounds like our 3 Ps.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose, partnership, performance.
That's right. And if I understand correctly, there are adults that continue to check in on the alumni as well. Is that right?
Yeah. And so I serve as an alumni counselor, and our staff have the opportunity to do that outside of the school day. And so these students who are receiving the scholarship get a minimum of 4 check-ins a year. And it's really an opportunity to just hear how they're doing in this post-secondary world.
Don, I'd love to bring you in here. We were reflecting on Coldry's chapter on innovation, and he's calling us in to think about schools and teachers having the ability to try new and different things. And as you've sat with us and heard the story of Intrinsic, I'm really intrigued at what's coming up for you.
Thank you, and thank you, Michelle, for sharing the story. This has just been wonderfully inspiring about what can be done within the charter schools community, and it really touches on the heart of what I think Ted was getting at in his writing on innovation, in a few ways. Because first, Ted reminds us that innovation takes a few forms. Innovation can be trying something completely new and different. Something completely novel that's never been done before, and seeing if it works, and if it does, replicate it out and scale it up and help more kids. But innovation can also be taking a proven model that might not exist in your area and bringing it there. So by importing the best of the Montessori programs into some things that are novel and new for Intrinsic, I think you're really hitting on the spirit of what he's getting to. And importantly, what Ted would say is that innovation happens closest to the problem. It happens closest to the things that we're trying to address, and it happens closest to the kids that we're trying to educate. So your responsiveness, your ability to see what's on the ground, to do things that's helped the kids in your building is just an exemplar of what's possible in the innovation that's embedded within the idea of the charter schools movement.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, as you're reflecting, I'd love to bring you in to kind of close us out and things that are coming up for you.
There's so much conversation around the word innovation and what does it mean? And sometimes innovation gets extrapolated to like you got to teach, standing on your head. And that's not what Ted was saying at all. He said, sometimes it's just trying new and different with the people that are closest to the action and iterating and finding what works. And one of his key points overall is that, we talk about all these problems in education, but he says, maybe they're in the classroom. And his point is that if the kids want to learn, they probably will. If they don't want to learn, they probably won't, and you probably can't make them. Well, who is going to take these students and connect with them in a way that they want to learn, take ownership for their learning, love to learn, find the joy in learning? Well, those are the teachers and the adults that are interacting with them every day. So I love the intrinsic value, but I also want to point out one more point. I tease my own kids. They're probably annoyed, but Stephen Covey went around the world searching literature of what are the habits of the highly effective people. And he boiled them down to 7 things. And yet that body of work, how many people actually pick up and refresh and be like, oh, I need to be proactive. I need to begin with the end in mind. I need to think win-win. I got to renew myself, right? So what I love about the founding story of Intrinsic is they went around and looked at the best. And they didn't just copy it. What they did is they brought it in and made it their own for them. And boy, I'll tell you what, if you don't have the time, the money to travel and go look at all the best, there's a great shortcut. Go to Intrinsic and Michelle will share with you.
Yes.
And you don't copy them. What you do is you find out what's going to work for you and your mission and your calling. But let me end with this. I know I've been running on here. When you listen to Michelle and you interact with her, this isn't a job. This is a mission and a calling.
Mm-hmm.
In schools that stay with their graduates after, it's not because they saw their job as their mission as a job and it's done. They're staying with them because they care about them, which brings us back to the secret sauce. It's love.
Mm-hmm.
And they exemplify love in a whole lot of ways.
Well said.
Yes.
So, Michelle, you're leading Intrinsic in Chicago.
Yeah.
Very competitive place, right? Lots of schools. There are more schools competing for less kids.
Yeah.
How do you stay competitive and how do you explain your value to students and families and educators that they want to be with you and that you should be their first choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, we have an incredible team of people leading our recruitment efforts. The chief communications officer, she always says her proudest title is a parent. So she's actually a founding parent who lived Intrinsic, right? So when she's leading those recruitment efforts, she's able to talk about her experience as a parent. We also have an incredible group of student ambassadors. These are young people across grade levels who share their experience. But we're able to talk about what makes Intrinsic different. Let's talk about the pod model and how your student is able to get exactly what they need because of that special space. We're able to talk about C Day, that kids are able to participate in those clubs like culinary and rock climbing during the day. Or they're able to get, and I shouldn't say or, I should say, and they're able to get that additional academic support during the school day. And so when kids and families usually hear those things, immediately a bell goes off, right, and says, let me go see Intrinsic. And so we bring kids and families in, we have tours, and we hope that Intrinsic is a place that they really want to be.
So as human beings, sometimes we take the path of least resistance, or at least I do, right? You pride yourself on high expectations and rigor.
Yeah.
How do you attract people to high expectations, rigor, hard work, when there might be easier ways to go get a diploma?
I think it's that special sauce that we have. I think it's you call it love, right? I think it's the community building. I think when kids and families walk into Intrinsic, I mean, the school just looks different, right? Than a traditional school that kids may have gone to for elementary school. And so I think immediately kids are intrigued. They're like, oh, this place looks different. I want to be here, right? And then they get to know some student ambassadors. And then I think there's a power in, we have a group of parent ambassadors who then parents calling parents and talking about their experience as a parent to another parent, right? Like that is so powerful. And they're able to talk about, hey, if you want to be here at Intrinsic, this is what you should expect. Not only your commitment for your child, but your commitment as a family and what's expected of you as a family.
Last question, I promise. Do you sell that you're innovative or that you're tried and true?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's the innovation, right? That's why like C Day is innovation, right? The pod model is innovation. And when we talk to parents, I'm the first to say, we're always working to improve and get feedback, and not just feedback from our staff, feedback from the most important stakeholders, which are our kids and families, right?
Now, I know you don't have staff because staff's an infection in the hospital, right?
Our team, yeah.
Michelle, you're awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Well, Michelle, we cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing the gift of your story and the story of Intrinsic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And friends, if you have not made it official, we encourage you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Follow us, stay along this journey. We're going to continue to speak with schools across the country, living out some of the ideas and practices that were based on the original chartering idea. Well, we'll be here at the same time, same station next week. Thank you for listening, and stay bold by choice.